The response to Admiral Morrison's defiant broadcast spread through human space like wildfire. Captain Sandra Brooks received the message aboard her heavy cruiser UES Valiant while patrolling the outer system defenses. Her crew cheered when they heard their admiral's words, but the yacht's celebration was brief as enemy contacts began appearing on their sensors. Commander Tony Rivera coordinated the massive evacuation effort from his command center on Europa. Civilian transports launched continuously carrying refugees toward the inner system, while his defense teams prepared for the inevitable assault. The hegemony ships moved with deliberate precision, showing no urgency despite humanity's rejection of their ultimatum. General Paul Jackson argued with the military council about strategic withdrawal versus making a final stand. His analysis showed that scattering human forces across multiple systems might preserve some colonies for future resistance. Admiral Morrison disagreed, believing that divided forces would be defeated piecemeal by the superior alien fleet. The first shots of the war came near Jupiter's moons when hegemony scouts encountered Captain Chris Evans leading a patrol squadron. His fighters were vastly outgunned but attacked immediately without waiting for reinforcements. The alien ship seemed surprised by the human willingness to engage despite obvious disadvantages. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes scored the first human kill when her quantum torpedo penetrated an enemy scout ship's shields. The alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the space around Ganymede. Her victory came at a terrible cost as enemy return fire destroyed half her squadron in seconds. The engagement data from the Jupiter battle reached Dr. Sam Peterson's research team within hours. His scientists analyzed every detail of the combat, looking for weaknesses in alien technology. The quantum torpedoes had proven effective against lighter enemy ships, but the larger vessels remained virtually invulnerable to human weapons. Dr. Nina Roberts worked around the clock perfecting targeting systems that could track the alien ships' unusual flight patterns. The enemy vessels moved in ways that defied human understanding of physics, making conventional weapons largely ineffective. Her new guidance systems showed promise in early testing, but needed more time for proper development. Mars Colony became a fortress as Chief Engineer Ben Taylor's teams installed weapons on every available ship. Civilian cargo haulers received missile launchers while passenger liners were fitted with defensive systems. The modifications were crude, but they gave non-military vessels a chance to fight back against enemy raiders. Lieutenant Amy Taylor transferred from the destroyer UES Thunderbolt to join the desperate defense preparations on Mars. Her experience with military systems proved invaluable in training civilian crews to operate their newly installed weapons. The volunteers showed determination that impressed even veteran military personnel. Captain Danny Walsh transformed his mining vessel, U.S. Horizon, into an improvised warship using industrial equipment as weapons. His cargo holds were filled with explosive charges that could be launched at enemy ships, while his mining lasers were reconfigured for combat use. Other civilian captains followed his example, creating an irregular fleet of converted vessels. The main hegemony fleet began its advance toward the inner system, moving in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Their ships maintained perfect spacing and coordination, suggesting a level of tactical discipline that human forces could not match. Admiral Morrison positioned his fleet near Saturn's rings, hoping to use the debris field as cover. Commander Lisa Harper's tactical analysis revealed disturbing patterns in enemy movement. The alien ships seemed to anticipate human strategies before they were implemented, suggesting either superior sensors or some form of precognitive ability. This made conventional military planning extremely difficult. Dr. Alex Carter studied captured alien technology from the destroyed scout ship, hoping to find useful intelligence. The wreckage contained materials and systems beyond human understanding, but some components seemed vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. This discovery led to new weapon concepts that might level the playing field. The Battle of Saturn's Rings began when the Hegemony Advance Guard encountered Admiral Morrison's defensive line. Human ships emerged from hiding places among the ice and rock fragments, launching surprise attacks on the alien formation. The initial assault caught the enemy off guard, but their superior numbers quickly turned the tide. Captain Sandra Brooks led her cruiser squadron in a desperate charge against the alien flagship, hoping to disrupt their command structure. Her ships absorbed massive damage while closing to effective weapons range, but their quantum torpedoes barely scratched the enemy vessel's armor. The counterattack was swift and devastating. Fighter squadrons led by pilots like Lieutenant Kelly Barnes swarmed around the larger alien ships looking for weak points in their defensive systems. The small human craft proved difficult for enemy weapons to target effectively, but they lacked the firepower to inflict serious damage on heavily armored opponents. Commander Tony Rivera's evacuation fleet found itself trapped between advancing enemy forces and the defensive perimeter around Earth. His civilian transports carried millions of refugees but had nowhere safe to run as alien ships appeared in every direction. The escort vessels prepared for a final desperate battle to protect the helpless civilians. General Paul Jackson's reserve forces launched a flanking attack from behind the asteroid belt, hoping to catch the enemy fleet from an unexpected direction. His ships managed to destroy several alien vessels before being overwhelmed by superior firepower. The general's flagship was among the first casualties of his doomed assault. Dr. Sam Peterson's quantum torpedo production reached maximum capacity as human ships expended their ammunition at an alarming rate. His factories on Luna worked continuously despite enemy bombardment, producing weapons that might buy precious time for the evacuation effort. Every torpedo that found its target was a small victory against impossible odds. The tide of battle shifted when massive explosions erupted within the alien fleet formation. Ships that had seemed invulnerable suddenly began breaking apart as their own weapon systems overloaded. The cause of this unexpected development remained unclear, but human forces pressed their advantage immediately. Admiral Morrison watched in amazement as some alien vessels turned their weapons against their former allies. The perfect unity of the hegemony fleet was fracturing before his eyes, revealing internal conflicts that no human intelligence had suspected. This breakdown offered the first real hope for human survival. Captain Chris Evans led the reformed fighter squadrons in attacks against the confused enemy formation. The alien ships seemed unable to coordinate their responses effectively, as different species within their fleet followed conflicting orders. This chaos gave human forces opportunities they had never expected to receive. The battle reached its climax when unknown ships emerged from the outer system darkness and began attacking hegemony forces. These new arrivals used technology similar to the aliens but fought with a ferocity that matched human desperation. The enemy fleet found itself caught between two hostile forces. Commander Lisa Harper identified the newcomers as rebels from within the hegemony itself. One of the 12 species had apparently decided to break free from their alliance and saw humanity's resistance as an opportunity to strike back at their former masters. This unexpected development changed everything about the war's prospects. The rebel ships that emerged from the darkness were unlike anything human sensors had detected before. Their hulls bore the scars of recent battles, and their weapon systems showed modifications that suggested desperate improvisation. Admiral Morrison received a transmission on an emergency frequency as the unknown vessels continued their assault on hegemony forces. The voice that spoke was alien, but carried a tone of barely controlled rage. Through translation software, the message became clear to everyone on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The speaker identified himself as Bloodclaw, leader of the Kethmori Rebellion against Hegemony. Oppression. Commander Lisa Harper analyzed the tactical situation as the three-way battle continued around Saturn's rings. The rebel fleet numbered only a few dozen ships, but their knowledge of hegemony weaknesses made them extremely effective against their former allies. Human forces found themselves with unexpected breathing room as alien attention divided between multiple targets. Captain Ryan Murphy commanded the stealth ship UES Ghost and received orders to make contact with the rebel leader. His vessel's advanced sensors and cloaking systems made it ideal for dangerous reconnaissance missions. Murphy approached the largest rebel ship while monitoring communications between the various alien factions. The first face-to-face meeting between humans and Kethmori took place aboard Murphy's ship. Bloodclaw appeared on the main screen as a towering figure covered in natural armor plates with eyes that burned with intelligent fury. The translation system struggled with his complex language, but the meaning was unmistakable. Bloodclaw explained that the Kethmori had been conquered by the hegemony 300 years earlier. His people were forced to serve as shock troops in the Coalition's expansion wars, while their homeworlds were stripped of resources. The human rebellion offered his species their first real chance for revenge and freedom. Dr. Alex Carter studied the biological data from the meeting with growing fascination. The Kethmori appeared to be natural warriors with enhanced physical capabilities and an understanding of technology that rivaled their former masters. Their culture valued individual strength and independence, making them natural allies for humanity. Commander Grace Williams had served in intelligence operations before the war and recognized the strategic value of the Kethmori alliance. Her analysis of intercepted hegemony communications revealed that other subject species were watching the rebellion closely. Success here might trigger uprisings across the galaxy. The first joint operation took place at the mining colony on Europa, where hegemony forces had established a beachhead. Colonel Matt Johnson led human ground troops alongside Kethmori warriors in an assault that would test whether the two species could actually fight together effectively. The battle for Europa demonstrated both the potential and problems of the human-alien alliance. Kethmori warriors fought with savage intensity that impressed human soldiers, but their tactics often conflicted with established military doctrine. Johnson found himself adapting his strategies to accommodate alien fighting methods. Dr. Lucy Adams worked frantically in the colony's medical facility, treating wounded from both species. The Kethmori physiology was completely different from human biology, but she discovered that basic trauma care principles applied to both races. Her work became a bridge between the Allied forces. Major Steve Parker initially resisted working with alien allies, believing that humans should fight their own battles. His attitude changed during a desperate defense of the colony's power station, when Kethmori warriors saved his squad from being overrun by hegemony assault troops. Navigator Emma Foster struggled to integrate alien technology with human systems aboard the Joint Command ship. The Kethmori used biological components in their computers that seemed to think independently. Her breakthrough came when she realized their systems responded to emotional input rather than logical commands. The alliance faced its greatest test when intelligence. Reports revealed that the hegemony was holding thousands of prisoners from both species at a facility in the asteroid belt. The rescue mission would require perfect coordination between human precision and Kethmori aggression. Captain Chris Evans led the fighter escort for the rescue operation, flying in formation with Kethmori attack craft. The alien pilots communicated through high-frequency sounds that human ears could barely detect, but their flying skills were extraordinary. They moved through space like living creatures rather than mechanical vehicles. The prison facility was heavily defended with automated systems designed to prevent exactly this type of rescue attempt. Human hackers worked with Kethmori biotechnicians to disable the security networks, while assault teams prepared for simultaneous attacks on multiple entry points. Lieutenant Amy Taylor coordinated the ground assault with a Kethmori pack leader whose name translated roughly as Sharptooth. The alien warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall and carried weapons that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. Their partnership required completely new tactical approaches. The prisoners rescued from the facility included not only humans and Kethmori, but also members of other species within the hegemony coalition. Many had been held for years and carried detailed knowledge about the enemy's internal structure and weaknesses. This intelligence proved invaluable for future operations. Dr. Sam Peterson's weapons research team gained access to Kethmori biotechnology through the Alliance. Their organic weapon systems could adapt to different targets automatically and showed remarkable efficiency in combat. Peterson began developing hybrid weapons that combined human engineering with alien biology. Commander Tony Rivera established refugee camps that housed both human and alien civilians displaced by the fighting. The cultural differences between species created numerous problems, but also opportunities for mutual understanding. Children from both races seemed to adapt more quickly than adults. Captain Sandra Brooks commanded joint fleet operations where human ships fought alongside Kethmori vessels. The alien ships used living components that could repair themselves during battle and showed tactical flexibility that complemented human strategic planning. Their combined effectiveness exceeded what either species could achieve alone. The intelligence gathered from rescued prisoners revealed that the hegemony's unity was largely artificial. Many member species resented their subordinate status and would rebel if given sufficient encouragement. The key was demonstrating that resistance could succeed against seemingly overwhelming odds, Bloodclaw shared tactical information about hegemony command structures with Admiral Morrison during planning sessions for their next major operation. The alien leader's knowledge of enemy weaknesses came from centuries of force service, but his people's desire for revenge burned as brightly as human determination to remain free. The Alliance developed new communication protocols that allowed rapid coordination between human and Kethmori forces. Emma Foster's breakthrough with biological computing systems enabled real-time data sharing that gave Allied fleets significant advantages in combat situations. Dr. Alex Carter's xenobiology research revealed that several other hegemony species had biological similarities to either humans or Kethmori. This suggested that additional alliances might be possible if contact could be established with other potential rebels within the enemy coalition. The success of joint operations began attracting attention from across the galaxy as news of the human Keth-Mori alliance spread through underground networks. Species that had been conquered decades or centuries earlier started sending secret messages offering support for the rebellion. Admiral Morrison and Bloodclaw developed a comprehensive strategy for the next phase of the war. Their plan involved striking at the hegemony's mobile command base, which coordinated all coalition military operations. Success would cripple enemy effectiveness across multiple star systems, but failure would likely result in the complete destruction of both Allied fleets. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewport when the transmission arrived. The communications officer turned pale as she listened to her headset, then looked up with fear in her eyes. She had been monitoring deep space frequencies for 3 years and had never heard anything like this before. The signal came from everywhere at once, bouncing off every satellite and relay station in human space. Commander Lisa Harper moved quickly to her tactical station and began running analysis on the incoming data stream. Her fingers flew across the holographic controls as she tried to make sense of what they were receiving. The voice that emerged from the speakers was not human. It spoke in perfect English, but with a tone that made everyone on the bridge feel cold inside. The alien voice was calm and measured as it delivered its message to all of humanity. We are the hegemony. We speak for 12 species that rule this galaxy. Your kind has expanded beyond your home system without permission. You have taken worlds that do not belong to you. You have violated the natural order that has existed for 10,000 years. Dr. Alex Carter rushed onto the bridge carrying his portable analysis equipment. As the ship's expert on alien life, he had been studying every piece of data about non-human intelligence for the past decade. He had always hoped first contact would be peaceful, but the tone of this message suggested otherwise. The transmission continued without pause. Your species will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. You will abandon all colonies beyond your birth world. You will submit to hegemony authority and accept your place as a subject species. If you refuse these terms, your entire civilization will be eliminated. Captain Danny Walsh aboard the colonial vessel UES Horizon was monitoring the same transmission from his position near the asteroid mining facilities. His crew of miners and engineers had never seen military action, but they all understood what the alien words meant. The message was being broadcast on every frequency across human space. Back on the Defiance, Admiral Morrison felt his jaw tighten as the alien voice concluded its ultimatum. To demonstrate our resolve, we will now remove one of your outer worlds. This action serves as proof of our capabilities and our determination to see our demands fulfilled. The tactical displays suddenly erupted with energy readings from the edge of the solar system. Commander Harper's instruments detected massive power signatures unlike anything in human technology. Ships appeared on the sensors, thousands of them arranged in perfect formation around Pluto. Dr. Carter watched in horror as his instruments registered the alien fleet. Each ship was larger than humanity's biggest vessels, and there were more of them than the entire human space navy combined. The technology readings showed power levels that should have been impossible. A brilliant flash of light appeared on the long-range cameras. Where Pluto had orbited for billions of years, there was now only empty space and expanding debris. The dwarf planet had been completely vaporized by a single shot from the alien flagship. The demonstration was over in less than 3 seconds. Captain Walsh felt his mining ship shake as the shockwave from Pluto's destruction reached the asteroid belt. His crew gathered around the communication station listening to reports flooding in from across human space. Every colony and outpost had received the same message and witnessed the same terrifying display of power. On Earth, President Katie Rodriguez convened an emergency session of the Colonial Council within minutes of receiving the transmission. Representatives from Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of smaller colonies argued furiously about how to respond. Some demanded immediate surrender, while others called for resistance despite the overwhelming odds. The debate raged for hours as military commanders presented their assessments of human defensive capabilities. General Paul Jackson explained that humanity's entire space fleet consisted of fewer than 200 combat vessels. Most were patrol ships and frigates designed to fight pirates, not an alien armada of unprecedented size, and Power Chief Engineer Ben Taylor worked frantically in the Mars shipyards trying to retrofit civilian vessels with whatever weapons could be installed quickly. His teams had begun the work before the council finished debating whether to fight or surrender. His daughter Amy served aboard the destroyer UES Thunderbolt and had already sent word that her crew was ready to fight. Dr. Sam Peterson activated the emergency protocols at the weapons research facility on Luna. His team had been developing new torpedo designs that might be effective against heavily armored targets. The quantum warheads were still experimental, but they represented humanity's best hope of inflicting damage on ships with superior defensive systems. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes climbed into her fighter cockpit at the Jupiter Defense Station and began running pre-flight checks. Her squadron had been placed on high alert the moment the alien transmission ended. They were outnumbered beyond any reasonable hope of victory, but none of them spoke about surrendering. Admiral Morrison reviewed the tactical data one final time before making his decision. The hegemony possessed overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. Any military engagement would result in massive human casualties with little chance of success. Every logical analysis suggested that resistance would only delay the inevitable, while costing millions of lives. Commander Harper waited for orders while monitoring the alien fleet movements. The enemy ships maintained their positions around the solar system but showed no signs of advancing toward Earth. They seemed confident that humanity would accept their terms rather than face annihilation. Dr. Carter studied the alien transmission for any clues about their intentions or weaknesses. The 12 species mentioned in their message suggested a coalition rather than a single unified race. Coalition governments often had internal disagreements that could potentially be exploited if humanity survived long enough to find them. The 72-hour deadline approached rapidly as human leaders continued their debates. Some colonies had already begun evacuation procedures while others prepared for siege. The division in human response reflected the impossible nature of their situation. Admiral Morrison finally activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every human ship and station across the solar system as he delivered humanity's answer to the alien ultimatum. We are not a species that kneels. We are not a people who surrender. If the stars demand our submission, they will find only fire in return. The die was cast and humanity's fate now rested on their ability to fight against impossible odds. The hegemony had demanded surrender, but they would discover that humans possessed something their technological superiority could not account for. They would learn that some species would rather burn than bow. Operation Starfire began at dawn on Mars colony time, when the combined human and Kethmori fleets launched their desperate assault on the hegemony's mobile command base. The massive alien structure drifted between Jupiter and Saturn, protected by defensive fleets that outnumbered the Allied forces 3-1. Captain Drew Henderson led the diversionary attack with his squadron of converted civilian ships. His miners and cargo haulers had been transformed into improvised warships carrying every explosive device that Dr. Sam Peterson's teams could manufacture. Their job was to draw enemy attention away from the main assault force. Admiral Morrison and Bloodclaw coordinated the primary strike from their respective flagships as hundreds of Allied vessels emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. The surprise was complete, but the hegemony response was swift and overwhelming. Energy beams that could vaporize entire ships began cutting through the Allied formation. Commander Julia Martinez discovered that the enemy had developed countermeasures for human quantum torpedoes during her first attack run. The alien command base absorbed direct hits that should have crippled its defensive systems. Her squadron found themselves trapped in a killing field with conventional weapons proving useless against improved enemy shields. Engineer Carl Robinson worked frantically to modify torpedo guidance systems while his ship shook under enemy fire. Kethemori biotechnicians assisted him using their understanding of organic computing to create hybrid weapons that could adapt to changing defensive frequencies. The modifications had to be completed during active combat. Lieutenant Pete Collins piloted one of the first human Keith Morey hybrid fighters that combined mechanical engineering with living components. His craft responded to his thoughts and emotions in ways that conventional ships never could. The biological systems seemed to anticipate his needs before he consciously recognized them. Rachel Stone flew alongside Collins in her own hybrid fighter as they penetrated deep into the enemy defensive perimeter. The organic components of their ships communicated with each other, creating an intuitive coordination that surprised both pilots. They moved as a single entity, rather than separate aircraft. The assault on the command base revealed unexpected complications when scans detected multiple species aboard the alien structure. Dr. Ann Hughes analyzed the energy signatures and realized that several hegemony member races were being held as prisoners rather than
serving as willing allies, Commander.
Lisa Harper coordinated targeting data for the main assault as Allied ships closed on the command base. Her tactical systems integrated human precision with Kethmori intuition, creating firing solutions that accounted for both mechanical accuracy and biological adaptation. The combined approach proved devastatingly effective. Captain Ryan Murphy's stealth ship penetrated the command base's outer hull, carrying a boarding party of human Marines and Kethmori warriors. The interior battles were fierce as defenders fought desperately to protect their command centers. The alien architecture was designed for species much larger than humans. Major Steve Parker led his troops through corridors that seemed to shift and change around them. The Kethmori warriors explained that the command base was partially alive and could reconfigure itself to trap intruders. This biological defense system required completely new tactical approaches. Dr. Ann Hughes worked with captured hegemony technology to understand their coordination systems. The alien networks used organic components that processed information in ways human computers could not match. Her breakthrough came when she realized the systems could be confused by contradictory biological signals. The battle reached a critical point when Hughes successfully introduced a virus into the enemy coordination network. The biological computers began receiving conflicting instructions that created chaos throughout the hegemony fleet. Ships that had fought in perfect harmony suddenly lost their tactical coherence. Mechanic Frank Rogers kept damaged Allied ships operational far beyond their design limits. His repair teams worked in vacuum suits while enemy fire raged around them. The combination of human determination and Kethemori regenerative technology allowed severely damaged vessels to continue fighting. Communications Officer Beth Turner maintained contact between scattered Allied forces despite intensive enemy jamming. Her hybrid communication systems used both electronic and biological components to penetrate alien interference. The coordination she provided proved crucial as the battle spread across multiple star systems. Captain Sandra Brooks commanded the reserve fleet that protected the Allied withdrawal routes. Her heavy cruisers formed a defensive line that allowed damaged ships to escape while continuing the assault on the command base. The fighting was desperate as enemy reinforcements arrived from across the system. The tide of battle turned when other hegemony member species aboard the command base began rebelling against their controllers. The prisoners that Dr. Hughes had detected were actually slaves forced to operate critical systems. The confusion created by her virus allowed them to break free and sabotage their captors. Bloodclaw led a boarding assault directly into the command base's central control chamber, where the hegemony leadership directed their military operations. The alien leaders had never faced ground combat personally and proved vulnerable to direct attack by experienced warriors. Lieutenant Amy Taylor coordinated fire support for the boarding parties using precision strikes to eliminate enemy strongpoints without damaging critical systems. Her targeting solutions had to account for the fact that Allied forces were fighting inside a structure that was itself under attack. Captain Chris Evans provided air cover for the ground assault teams as they fought their way through the command base interior. His fighter squadron engaged enemy defenders in the massive hangar bays, while avoiding the structural damage that could collapse entire sections of the facility. The destruction of the hegemony coordination systems created a cascading failure throughout their military network. Fleets that had operated with machine-like precision suddenly found themselves unable to communicate effectively or coordinate their movements. The technological advantage they had enjoyed began to collapse. Dr. Sam Peterson's hybrid weapons finally began proving their worth as Kethmori biotechnology adapted to overcome alien defensive systems. The organic components learned from each failed attack and automatically adjusted their approach. Enemy shields that had seemed impenetrable began failing under sustained assault. Engineer Carl Robinson's modifications to human targeting systems allowed conventional weapons to achieve unprecedented accuracy against enemy vessels. The combination of mechanical precision and biological adaptability created firing solutions that enemy computers could not predict or counter. Effectively, Commander Tony Rivera evacuated Allied personnel from the heavily damaged command base as structural failures began spreading throughout the massive structure. The biological components that had made it so formidable were now working against their creators as the organic systems died and began to decay. The final phase of Operation Starfire saw the complete destruction of the hegemony command base in a massive explosion that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Allied victory came at enormous cost, with over half their fleet destroyed or severely damaged, but the enemy's coordination capabilities had been eliminated. Admiral Morrison surveyed the aftermath of the battle from his damaged flagship while receiving damage reports from across the Allied fleet. The hegemony's military network was in chaos, but their individual fleets remained dangerous opponents. The war was far from over, but humanity and their allies had struck a blow that would be felt across the galaxy. Bloodclaws forces had suffered equally heavy casualties, but the Kethmori leader expressed satisfaction with the results. The destruction of the command base would encourage other oppressed species to rise up against their hegemony masters. The rebellion was spreading beyond its original participants. The destruction of the hegemony command base sent shockwaves across the galaxy as oppressed species learned that their masters were not invincible. Admiral Morrison commanded what remained of the human fleet from the battle-scarred UES Defiance, while reports arrived of uprisings on dozens of worlds previously under alien control. Captain Noah Williams led diplomatic missions to contact potential allies among the fragmenting hegemony forces. His converted civilian ship carried translation equipment and cultural specialists who worked to establish communication with species that had never interacted with humans before. Each successful contact brought new allies to the growing rebellion. Commander Ruby Clark coordinated intelligence operations to track the movements of remaining hegemony loyalist fleets. The enemy forces had scattered into autonomous groups led by individual species commanders who no longer trusted each other completely. This fragmentation created opportunities but also made the enemy unpredictable. The core hegemony species refused to accept their defeat and began preparing a final, desperate assault on Earth itself. Their massive dreadnought emerged from the outer reaches of space carrying weapons capable of destroying entire planets. The vessel was larger than any ship humanity had ever encountered. Captain Troy Baker commanded the last intact human battle group as they moved to intercept the approaching dreadnought. His ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they represented humanity's final line of defense. The enemy vessel seemed unstoppable as it advanced toward the inner solar system. Dr. Violet Hughes continued her mother's research into consciousness transfer technology that could allow human pilots to merge temporarily with their ships. The experimental procedure was dangerous and untested, but it offered the possibility of matching alien capabilities through human determination and ingenuity. Lieutenant Aaron Stone volunteered for the first consciousness transfer experiment, despite warnings about unknown risks. The procedure connected his nervous system directly to his fighter's control systems, creating a hybrid entity that was more than human. His ship became an extension of his body and mind. The technology proved successful beyond all expectations, as Stone's enhanced capabilities allowed him to outmaneuver enemy fighters that had previously been untouchable. His consciousness merged with the ship's systems, created reaction times and spatial awareness that no purely biological pilot could match. Commander Ian Scott prepared for the final assault on the Hegemony dreadnought, using a converted mining vessel loaded with every explosive device available. His crew consisted of volunteers who understood that their mission was essentially suicidal, but necessary to prevent Earth's destruction. Kethmori forces led by Bloodclaw joined the desperate defense of humanity's home system, despite having their own worlds to protect. The alien warrior explained that the fight had become about more than just human survival. It was about the right of all species to determine their own destiny. The climactic battle above Earth began when the Hegemony dreadnought entered weapons range and began charging its planet-killing systems. Human and allied forces attacked from every direction, but their weapons seemed inadequate against the massive vessel's defensive capabilities. Jake Phillips worked frantically to keep his ship's weapons operational as enemy fire tore through the hull around him. His engineering crew performed miracles of improvisation using salvaged parts and sheer determination to maintain combat effectiveness, long after their systems should have failed completely. Rachel Stone's hybrid fighter squadron penetrated the dreadnought's defensive perimeter, using their enhanced capabilities to avoid defensive fire that would have destroyed conventional aircraft. The consciousness transfer technology allowed them to react faster than any purely mechanical system. The breakthrough came when Allied forces discovered that the dreadnought's massive size was also its weakness. The ship's biological components required constant coordination between different sections, and Dr. Violet Hughes found a way to disrupt those connections using modified versions of her mother's virus. Lieutenant Pete Collins led the assault on the dreadnought's main reactor core, flying his hybrid fighter through corridors that were never designed for such small craft. The organic components of his ship adapted to the alien environment, while his enhanced consciousness processed tactical information at superhuman speeds. Captain Drew Henderson's converted cargo ships proved surprisingly effective against the dreadnought's point defense systems. The enemy had designed their defenses to engage military vessels and struggled to target the improvised weapons and irregular attack patterns of the civilian converts. Commander Lisa Harper coordinated the final assault from her damaged tactical station as systems failed around her. The integration of human precision and Kethmori intuition had created new forms of tactical analysis that gave Allied forces advantages their enemies could not counter. Engineer Carl Robinson's hybrid weapons finally achieved their full potential as the organic components learned to adapt to hegemony defensive systems in real time. Each shot became more effective than the last, as the biological elements evolved new approaches to penetrating enemy armor. The dreadnought's internal defenses began failing as consciousness-enhanced pilots fought their way through the ship's corridors. The alien crew had never faced opponents who could think and react at machine speeds while retaining human creativity and determination. Captain Ryan Murphy's boarding party reached the dreadnought's control center, where they discovered that much of the ship's crew consisted of enslaved species forced to operate critical systems. The revelation that even their enemies were victims of hegemony oppression changed the nature of the final battle. Dr. Violet Hughes transmitted the consciousness transfer technology to Allied ships across the battle zone, allowing more pilots to undergo the enhancement procedure. The risk was enormous, but the transformed pilots became capable of feats that seemed impossible to conventional observers. Bloodclaw led Kethmori warriors in the final assault on the dreadnought's command bridge, where the last hegemony leaders made their final stand. The alien commanders fought with desperate fury, but could not match the combined determination of humans and their allies. The dreadnought's destruction came not from external attack, but from internal sabotage as enslaved crew members turned against their masters. The massive explosion could be seen from Earth's surface as humanity's greatest threat was finally eliminated. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, watching the debris field that had once been an unstoppable weapon. The victory had cost enormous sacrifices, but Earth was safe, and the hegemony's power was broken forever. Captain Sandra Brooks surveyed the aftermath of the battle as Allied forces began rescue operations for survivors from both sides. The war was ending not with the subjugation of the defeated, but with liberation for all species that had suffered under hegemony oppression. The galaxy began to change as news of the human victory spread to every corner of known space. Species that had been enslaved for centuries started asserting their independence while former hegemony loyalists sought negotiated settlements rather than continued warfare. Commander Tony Rivera established relief operations for the millions of refugees displaced by the fighting. The camps now housed beings from dozens of different species, all working together to rebuild their shattered lives. The cooperation between former enemies suggested hope for lasting peace. Lieutenant Amy Taylor participated in the formal surrender ceremonies as remaining hegemony forces laid down their weapons. The document signed that day established principles of species self-determination that would govern galactic civilization for generations to come. Dr. Alex Carter began the long process of establishing formal diplomatic relations between humanity and the dozens of species that had joined the rebellion. Each culture brought unique perspectives and capabilities that would enrich the growing alliance of free worlds. The consciousness transfer technology developed during the war's final phase opened new possibilities for human development. Volunteers who underwent the enhancement retained their expanded capabilities even after disconnecting from their ships, creating a new branch of human evolution. Bloodclaw and Admiral Morrison met one final time aboard the UES Defiance to discuss the future of their alliance. The Kethmori leader expressed his people's gratitude for human friendship and their shared commitment to preventing any future attempts at galactic domination. The war ended not with conquest, but with transformation, as the rigid hierarchy of the hegemony gave way to a loose confederation of independent species. Humanity had not only survived their trial by fire, but had become the catalyst for galactic liberation. Years later, historians would mark the human rebellion as the beginning of a new age of freedom among the stars. The species that had refused to surrender when faced with impossible odds had inspired an entire galaxy to fight for the right to determine their own destiny.